Hey there, it's just Australia here, back with another video. You get them on a semi-regular basis now, every 1 to 2 weeks. Doing my best. It's been pretty hard this week, and last week I've been so busy, and this week's been a bit rough as well. But I'm here, and I'm here to talk about Umbreon, which is something I'm very well known for, using Umbreon in OU. It's something that to me has always been very intuitive how to use it, how it fits. At least after I played the tier for a little bit, it just kind of seemed obvious to me that it has a place at least. But I've specified here support Umbreon because non-support Umbreon, namely Baton Pass variants, have been used throughout OU, and I'd say have been a bit better understood by the general player base, but always been quite a fringe option. So one particular pertinent option was Mean Look. Trap passing has always been quite an obnoxious strategy that's no longer legal, but is something that Umbreon was very much capable of. You could also do Curse and Baton Pass together, which is still legal, and you can pair it with a White Herb user or give it White Herb itself to get the pass off and without disrupting the recipient's speed, just giving them an attack and defense boost. I've also seen it used in Ubers with like Deoxys attack, which is cool. But yeah, anyway, I'm not an expert in those variants. The Curse Path variant is something that I've never messed with, and it doesn't. It's not that I would never use it, but it just doesn't interest me or suit my style of play at all, or style of building. Whereas support-based Umbreon, that's my wheelhouse. Oh my goodness, I can't speak today. This video might not be the best, but I think I made the sound a bit better. So, hey, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, I'm so well known for using Umbreon that in Discord servers I'm not even in. That are ADV focused, people have made emotes, which is just like my nickname, DA, that displays an Umbreon. So it felt only appropriate to do a video on it at some point, and I didn't want to do something too stressful with how much else I've got going on right now. So something easy for me is talking about this Umbreon, and this is the set that it runs, or at least that I run on it, which is Wish, Protect, Pursuit, and Toxic. Let's go over some of like the intricacies or like the reasons for running this as opposed to other moves on it. So one thing to note is it does have instant recovery in the form of Moonlight, but its PP is bad and Sand is permanent in ADV OU, so it's generally not preferable. Protect also has its own upsides, it's like Scouting, and it has synergy with Toxic as well, with Toxic Stall. It's quite a handy little move. So yeah, while it would obviously love if it had like Recover, we don't live in that world, so Wish, Protect will have to do. Pursuit is an awesomely strong move. Its strongest stab option, in case you're wondering, is Hidden Power. It doesn't learn Crunch. Bite is only like 60 base power, so Hidden Power would be the best option if you wanted to just run a stab on it. But in OU, you really want to be trapping, particularly Gengar, with it. We'll get into like the details of what it can and can't do a little bit later when I compare it with Tyranitar. Toxic as well, I consider it essential. Other people have been using like Charm and Baton Pass. They're like, oh, Wish Pass. Oh, Charm like deals with like Tyranitar coming in. It's like whatever you do, your Spike's bait and your Metagross bait, just kind of like live with that, threaten as much as you can otherwise, and just focus on doing its job. Like Toxic is so good as well because it helps force Pokemon out, like Claydol, well, less so Claydol, but like especially like Starmie, and then you can get the Pursuit on top of the Toxic chip, and then if you've got like Sand and Spikes as well in play, or even just like one of them, or whatever else, then like suddenly you can be doing some serious damage. Yeah, so that's like the general gist of the set. And in terms of like how you use it, how you build with it, let's compare it with Tyranitar first of all, because Tyranitar's the most prominent OU Pursuit user, And Umbreon and Tyranitar have very few similarities, but it really helps to go over where they're similar, where they're different, to get a sense of where you should be using Umbreon, how you should be using it, why you should be using it. So the biggest, most obvious difference is that one of them provides sand. So most Pokemon in the tier, most teams in the tier, especially like hazard-based ones, which is most teams in the tier because Spikes is incredible, and even though the Spikers are not always the greatest, especially with like trapping and all of those shenanigans, Spikes are so good. So, and Sand complements that and helps deal with certain Pokemon. But if you want to use the certain Pokemon that Sand is good with dealing with, like a Snorlax, like a Curse Resslax, a Crocoon, or I don't know, maybe even like a Rain Dance offensive Suicune, you could do something creative with that maybe. Then Umbreon, while it doesn't clear Sand, it doesn't provide it while trapping Gengar, which is the one common thread. Is, when you're comparing Tyranitar and Umbreon, you're talking about Pokemon that both trap Gengar and then do wildly different things beyond that. So, on top of that, Tyranitar also can Pursuit Trap Fire types, although this is more Moltres. There's only really Moltres and Charizard that you see super commonly in OU. Charizard can run Brick Break, it can run Focus Punch as well. So Tyranitar can trap Charizard sometimes, but mostly Moltres is like the thing you're likely to trap with it, and Umbreon isn't terribly good versus Moltres because it kind of just gets burned and worn down. So it's just not great against that, but what it is great against is Starmie, which used to be a lot more popular than it is as like an offensive Pokemon on TSS. So like a Gengar Starmie TSS, like UD topped the ladder with years ago, or like in the Kurt sample with Jolteon as well. Like those kinds of teams are where Umbreon's getting the most value because it's very bulky, so it's not just one and done with its pursuit to the same degree that Tyranitar is, although Gengar Hypnosis and Explosion could be annoying. But anyway, in general, Umbreon can try and trap multiple Pokemon, and it can trap Starmie. Beyond that, there's like a lot of different quirks. So one plus side for Tyranitar as well is that it's not Spikes bait. So that's mainly talking about Skarmory and Fortress. It can run Fire Blast. Umbreon in theory could fit HP Fire, but it's not doing much damage, especially to Skarmory. So you need to outsource some kind of anti-Spikes measures alongside Umbreon. Either, well, that mostly means like a Fortress. It could mean a Magneton as well, though I've definitely fallen out of love with Magneton, and Umbreon, Magneton, you start to get to these very trapping heavy teams, tend to be a bit unstable, but it's viable. It's a viable choice. But yeah, Magneton's a good potential partner, especially if you wanted to try like Bat and Pulse Umbreon. Like Bat and Pulse Umbreon with Magneton could be kind of nasty because Skarm and Fori and Metagross all love to come into it. Jirachi as well. Because Steel types are the one thing that like really just completely own Umbreon. So yeah, Spikes bait. Tyranitar also phases with Roar, checks Jirachi. It has the option of Thunder Wave. Not many people use it yet, and I might do a video on it, but it is a very nice tech that it can run. And beyond that, it's got like a variety of coverage options, so like Ice Beam, Hidden Power, Grass, Brick Break, Rock Slide. Depending on what the team needs, Crunch, of course, for like an actual good Dark Stab. Even like you could do Surf, which hits Doug and fires. You could do Thunder or Thunderbolt as well. Like there's so many options. Like Tyranitar like hits hard, and on top of like pursuing stuff is like the power and like the utility of Roar and like checking Jirachi. You can run Earthquake on it as well. I'm not keen on it, but that used to be something some people would run, which was like Rock Slide, Earthquake, Crunch, Pursuit. But I don't love physical moves besides maybe Brick Break on Pursuit Tar because of the fact that in doing its job, the things it's trying to trap are going to burn it. Gengar is almost certainly going to burn Tyranitar. Moltres, if it appears, is almost certainly going to burn Tyranitar. So I don't like trying to do both. But Umbreon, while it is Spike's bait and it doesn't check Jirachi, in fact it's setup bait for Jirachi, it does check Celebi, Suicune, Jolteon if they're not substitute variants. And it does provide wish support. And like one other thing to note is that Tyranitar and Umbreon can be used together, but the benefit of that is using a non-pursuit Tyranitar with a Pokemon that likes pursuit support. So like a Mixmance or a Snorlax or a Fortress or a Breloom or whatever. You can pair that with the Umbreon, get the benefits of having that Pokemon with pursuit, so that Pokemon doesn't have as severe Gengar issues. And then you've got like a Choice Band Tyranitar or a Dragon Dance Tyranitar or like a Mixtar or something else. And that's something like when I've seen other people using Umbreon besides me, that's the route most people go down. Is they're like, yeah, I don't think Umbreon's that good, but if I was going to use it, or if I have like used it, then it's like, oh well, I'll like it with like Tyranitar, so I can use non-pursuit Tyranitar because Tyranitar's really good, and other people are particularly keen on like Dragon Dance and whatever else. So I don't want to like understate the value of that, but to me, most of the time that's not what I'm doing with it. But if you wanted to run Umbreon on a more offensive, aggressive team, that's how you do it. You'd pair it with an offensive Tyranitar plus something that likes Gengar weaken or remove, like a Salamence. That's the basic idea of Umbreon on more offensive teams. But on more defensive teams, then it's like maybe there's like a Snorlax Fortress kind of deal. I mean, yeah, they can fit on more offensive stuff as well, but those like the wish support and they like the anti-Gengar support. Fortress as well can like paralyze Gengar, which can help with trapping it, weakens it as well. So now one thing I do want to address with regards to wish support is a lot of the time when Umbreon's coming in, it's got a job to do. It needs to trap something, or it needs to like poison Suicune so it doesn't get out of hand. Like a lot of the time when it's using Wish, it needs it, especially with like not healing and sand as well. So as far as like Wish users go, it's definitely not as good as a team supporter as like a Jirachi is. It just isn't. But it's a nice little option that it certainly gives it potential in the builder. But I'd say in practice, the Wish support is definitely a bit overrated on Umbreon specifically, just because it's quite needy in terms of those wishes for itself. Now, I still think it's a great Pokemon because I think trapping Starmie is huge, and having a pursuit user which doesn't provide sand is also a big deal for certain stall teams. So, with that in mind, I just want to show off a few teams and like discuss how you use Umbreon on those teams and like where the benefit is coming from. So I've tried to bring like a few different styles. These will all be shared in the description of the video. So if you want to play with them, they're down below. I haven't got any Magneton ones here actually. Again, I'm just not keen on. Actually, well, I could pull up one Umbreon, one Magneton one. In fact, there is a video on my channel which a lot of you have watched. If you're watching this, you probably watched it. It's one of my most viewed videos, which does include an Umbreon Magneton team. But this is a more recent structure of mine. I mean, I've always toyed around with this kind of idea, but this is a team I've really quite settled on. Now, it is a little bit weak to Choice Band Salamence, as it has no flying resist. So be it. It happens. I'm really not that scared of Choice Band Salamence, and this team is just so great into everything else. It does still have counterplay against Choice Band Salamence anyway, so the idea of this team is just around Curslax. What does Curslax need? It needs Pursuit for Gengar. In theory, that's kind of it. It's like, well, it just needs pursuit, and it needs rapid spin as well, because it's vulnerable to spikes and it doesn't do anything to Scarm. And you're like, and it needs Scarm removal, and I'm like, kinda. It can be a threat when Scarm's gone, but it's mostly going to be better in matchups where you don't see Scarm in the first place. But my idea with this team in particular was also to give it Heal Bell, so that it can make use of that rest and be a bit more effective defensively. And that also helps Umbreon as well, because while it does synchronize, and that's awesome, like burning Will-O-Wisp Gengar, or like paralyzing Thunderwave Zapdos, definitely nifty. Those moves, those statuses are also hugely disruptive to Umbreon. Burn less so than the others, but still annoying. So Heal Bell is also really nice with that. Wish is also great for Fortress, and having spikes, this team having spikes, means that it isn't going completely all in on Curslax being victorious. You've got spikes, you've got Will-O-Wisp, you've got phasing, and then you've got like a really strong supporting cast. You've also got 3 special walls technically, which is kind of crazy. If you wanted, you could either classify, I don't know, like Swampert or Fortress in some sense. Fortress you don't really use as a special wall in OU. Swampert against some Zapdos and Jolteon maybe. Or Jirachi actually for that matter. But yeah, kind of funny. Umbreon tends to want to be paired with other special walls, which in some ways dims its special defensive capabilities. On the flip side, like I guess Pursuit Tyranitar can also be seen as a special wall, in a very loose sense. Like Umbreon isn't that great against anything with Substitute or anything called Jirachi. So you basically guaranteed need a backup special wall for Raikou, Subcom Mind, Suicune, all the Jirachi variants, which is plenty, far too many. So you've got all of that to contend with. So you do tend to fit it with like a Snorlax, maybe even a Blissey. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's not the most obvious or potent synergy, but Blissey's alright. You know, you could do it if you want to. Umbreon plus Blissey is probably also a bit more resilient against Zapdos if you use Umbreon as your early Zapdos switch or whatever. Maybe that's not a wise move. But yeah, in terms of using Umbreon on this team, it's really about just trapping Gengar, trapping Starmie, potentially even trapping Claydol, just to get the hazard advantage with Fortress, and to allow Curslax to not be walled. At least by Gengar, you might still have a Skarmory to deal with. And that's kind of it. This team works very well in practice, for me at least. Obviously, this kind of team is not for everyone, but I think it's one of the best Umbreon teams I've ever made. This team here is in a similar vein. If we compare with that previous team, I mean, there's quite a few similar Pokemon. This team as well, very similar to both of these teams. As you can see, these teams all kind of look a little bit similar, but there's also some different things going on. Here, the idea is more about Heal Bell alongside a Rest Zapdos. Maybe even less of a direct win condition, but it helps against Gengar for Fortress and for Flygon, and giving the team some hazard advantage. This team here with Flygon as well, half the team is ground immune, which is quite nice for Fortress not being too fussed about getting the spin off in some other situations. So it's a team. These are some of my stall teams. But yeah, the basic idea is just trap Gengar. That's number one priority. But trapping Starmie, also handy. Yeah, and this team you absolutely could run Pursuit Tyranitar. This team as well, you absolutely could run Pursuit Tyranitar. There's nothing wrong with Umbreon here. You know, on the flip side, you don't get Sand, which is neither here nor there. Like half the team's affected by Sand. You're more Spikes bait, but on the other hand, Wish is really nice for Furry, Wish is nice for Swampert. So it's a trade-off, and it lets you explore like some different structures to what Tyranitar necessarily allows. And I think that's also hugely important. Here is an example of a Magneton team with Umbreon. I don't really love it anymore these days. I find it a little bit soft to Breloom, but too soft to Breloom for my liking. But other than that, it does show you can use Umbreon with Magneton and then Snorlax to trap Skarmory so that these Pokemon can function. What I hate with like Umbreon, Magneton, and then like Snorlax is you're stacking so many Pokemon that are really Spikes bait, that really bring in Skarmory, that really suggest a Magneton. So if for whatever reason you're not able to get off the trap, like maybe the Skarm is paired with a Dugtrio, or maybe there's like a Light Screen, or maybe it's just an Earthquake Fortress that's coming in and causing you problems. You know, it's just so over-reliant on the trap that it becomes kind of exploitable. But in terms of like teams that do make use of Magneton like this is one of the better ones. It's not the only option, but you know, that's another way of building with Umbreon is with Magneton. Like, as you can see, I prefer the Fortress takes. I think they're a bit more dynamic and a bit less exploitable. But yeah, Umbreon with Magneton is a perfectly coherent strategy, if, in my opinion, not a very reliable one in practice. Although, like I said, maybe batting past Umbreon with Magneton could be something. Anyway, here's a team that looks a lot more like what everybody else likes to play than what I like to play. But it's still got my flavour. So, there's a DD Tar with Umbreon. So look, you can do Tyranitar and Umbreon together, and it's like, well, hey, there's some benefits. Half this team isn't grounded, which helps a bit against the Spike's weakness. There's also 2 Taunt users and a Mixments. So there's a lot of stuff that like pressures opposing Skarmory. Salamence does like a good Gengar switch in, and so does Skarm, to be honest. Even though like it can definitely function without Pursuit support. Absolutely, it certainly doesn't mind it. So yeah, this is like an interesting take on that. You can definitely toy around with this kind of idea plenty. There's lots of different ways you can go about it. But this is something that I cooked up just for this video. So hopefully... Oh, there's one more thing I want to cover, which is the EV spread, which you may have... If you're paying any attention on the screen, you may have seen it. And you may be going, that's a lot of special attack. And it is. Thing is that Umbreon is like really, really bulky. Like, it doesn't need to go like fully specially defensive to be like unbreakable for Gengar, unbreakable for Starmie, unbreakable for Salamence on the special side. Physical bulk, you could opt for some of that. Salamence Spirit Breaker's doing like 40 to 50-ish. I can't remember exactly. Doug Earthquake is also in that kind of range where it's like you can kind of shrug it off without Sand. With Sand, you can kind of tread water, but they're going to crit you eventually. It's that kind of deal with his physical bulk. So you could invest in his physical bulk if you really wanted, I guess. But special attack investment is necessary because its special attack is really where it's lacking in terms of the set. Is like it's more than bulky enough to do its job, but it's a bit weak. And that's one of the other bigger downsides of it is that, you know, when trapping like a Gengar, the Pursuit Tyranitar is going to almost completely OHKO the Gengar. Maybe it'll come a little bit short if it's like a specially defensive Gengar, which fine. That's still a lot more than Umbreon's doing, which will probably be like 60% with the pursuit. Maybe even less. Oh, I don't know. Will it do less? Let me pull up the calc. Okay, got the calc up. I had to set up the setting. Why is that the standard set? Whatever. Crazy people. They don't know. They don't know what's good. Always. Sometimes they'll do use smoke on sets, but sometimes they're missing stuff. So what? I normally run 196 with Calm. That's my go-to. If we double that, let's put in Crunch for display purposes. This is what a pursuit on the Switch to like a bulky Gengar is, which is... It's 2-hit KOing. It is pretty close to guaranteed even without Sand. If we look at an offensive Gengar, that's 3-hit KOing. That's I think the benchmark here is against 0-0 Gengar. Get 3-hit KOs, which means one pursuit plus a switch pursuit is enough to KO a Gengar as well. And look, you don't need more special defense bulk. This is without investment. Look, these numbers are without investment. If we put max HP, let alone, then we do like 52 and Calm. That Thunderbolt's doing max 21. That Explosion's doing 50 to 60. So, like, that's the thing, is that Umbreon takes hits really well. It doesn't really dole them back out very easily, but against specific targets, it can trap. And it's not dealing with Gengar completely on its own. It's not dealing with Stami completely on its own, but like in the context of a team, it makes dealing with those Pokemon a lot easier. But on the flip side, that's also why you don't want to just slap it on a team and be like, yeah, I have no more Gengar problems. I can run 5 Pokemon walled by Gengar, and I'll be fine with like my Snorlax, Breloom, Fortress, whatever. You can't like go that gung ho. Same with like Magneton or Pursuitar or whatever. Even though there's more reliable trappers. So yeah, team building wise, let me go back to the team building screen. There we go. Team building wise, you want it to be like, ooh, trapping Gengar is nice. Ooh, having a Gengar switch in is handy. Ooh, it gives me a bit of a better option in the hazard game. And that advantage in the hazard game is enough for me to be able to win the game. Like, that's the kind of advantage you're seeking with it. It's just to get the advantage in the hazard game, or in terms of allowing your Pokemon to function. And then kind of just letting them do their jobs. Let the rest of the team like really focus on winning. It's a glue Pokemon. It's like these teams aren't necessarily like built around Umbreon. I've just been like, building this and being like, oh, Umbreon fits here. It gives me like this advantage in this situation. And yeah, in terms of using it, trappers are very simple. You bring them in on the Pokemon you want to trap. Ideally with Battle Pass, but usually just, this Pokemon came into X Pokemon that's walled by that Pokemon. Like, Gengar came into my Fortress. Cool, I will go to Umbreon. And it's very linear. And then, I click Pursuit. You know, if there's like spikes up and sand and stuff, then like you have to consider Wish and all that stuff to a degree, which is again where Umbreon falters a little bit, but generally the focus is just get that Pursuit off. Umbreon's value on your team is mostly from Pursuit, with its stellar bulk and its serviceable special attack. Everything else is a bonus and there to enable Umbreon to do its job. I hope that gives some like instructive information how to play it. I generally find that like trappers and those kinds of things are very linear. Like I can explain to you like, here's what it does. Here's a scenario. This is what you do. That's kind of the end of it. Which is partly why I don't really like trapping in general. It just makes the game so simple. in ways that, like, when you remove trapping, you have to work a lot more for your victories, I feel like, without trapping. But rant over. I'll probably do like a full video on trapping one day. But anyway, in OU, trapping is legal. Abuse it. It's powerful. Umbreon, not the most potent trapper, but a perfectly capable one. Use it to win hazard games. Use it to help like a Curse-Lax. Use it to help Flygon be like a little bit less walled. One thing as well is that I've paired it with here on a couple of these teams is with Weezing. In fact, all of these like more defensive teams here. Weezing often ends up burning Gengar or like sludge bombing into it, trading wisps with it as well. That also is another tool against Gengar. And like Celebi as well, or on this team, the ability. And the Zapdos as well. Umbreon's not even the only Gengar switch. It doesn't need to be for Umbreon to be justified. And in fact, having those other things there makes the team more solid because it makes the Umbreon less instantly predictable, less instantly necessary, and it gives your Gengar weak Pokemon more reasons. Well, it gives you more routes to deal with Gengar, in turn making your Gengar weak Pokemon's weakness to Gengar less important. I guess one brief aside as well about other ghosts. So, in terms of the other ghosts, there's Sableye, Misdreavus, Dusclops, Banette. None of them are that great. Pretty much all of them are better against Umbreon than against Pursuit-Tar because Pursuit-Tar is stronger. Most of those Pokemon are not very good because they're not very good against Pursuit-Tar. Sableye, while it's not Dark Weak, is pretty frail. Banette does have a fast HP fighting. It does have a high attack and it's faster than Tyranitar with appropriate investment, so Banette has like his own host of other problems, like his bulk is dreadful. So it's like gonna struggle with blocking like a Starmie or something, but against these kind of teams, Banette's really good. Sableye, pretty damn good. Dusclops, pretty obnoxious as well. So with those kinds of matchups, it's more about, like, if those Pokemon are Spike's weak, exploit the Spike's weakness with the Roar or whatever you've got. If the Pokemon isn't Spike's weak, just focus on not letting it do its job and focus on getting out your own spikes and try and hold things together. But those are just bad matchups that come about when you rely on Umbreon as well. So something to be aware of. Very few people really are all that keen on those Pokemon. But if your opponent like loves those in a tournament, I'd probably advise against using an Umbreon team. But that's kind of it. That's the only thing that it really opens you up to consistently is weird ghost types. Missy, Gengar, Sableye, Dusclops. So yeah, hopefully you found this instructive. These kinds of teams Umbreon fits on are definitely like a bit farther from the standard. I feel more as a function of the fact that players generally don't like style extremes. First of all, like they don't like really heavy offense and really hard stall. Secondly, because players don't always love to branch out that much, at least like the best players. And like thirdly, because hardstall does have its flaws. Like it's a very control-based style, but when you can't quite get that control, when you do run into like a slightly goofy matchup, or when the trapping just doesn't go your way, which happens all the time in OU, those teams could be like a bit less flexible in response to that. So but these are not bad teams. They just require something different from you, require you to think about the game in a certain way, to like have a focus on control, on getting the field conditions that you want, on preventing your opponent from getting what they want, and like trying to win the long game, being less concerned about like the short game. It's like a lot of players, they like to play flashy, they like to predict, and they like to click. And these kinds of teams don't jive with that at all. Like, there are times when you need to make predictions, you need to make aggressive plays or plays with foresight. Yes. But that should be done in the context of, like, strategic maneuvering and getting the field conditions that you want. And then just, like, locking your opponent down and maintaining it. And, like, eventually winning through those means. And it is also, I guess, it's not like a direct win condition in some of these teams. Like, the Curstax one, sure there is. On this one, it's like, well, get your spikes up, keep your opponent from getting spikes, and then use Toxic on Will-O-Wisp and Leech Seed. I've won important tour games with this team. It's perfectly usable. Whether you like it or not, whether you think it's a good team or not, that's up to you. Everybody's got different tastes. Umbreon teams are generally not most people's cup of tea. I like them. At least the Fortress variants. Hopefully you give Umbreon a spin. If it's not your thing, I understand it, but it's always worth giving it a go, seeing if you can make something of it. Seeing if you can get your head around it, seeing if it just opens the way that you see ADV OU a little bit more, the way you see competitive Pokemon a little bit more. So, that's it from me. I've managed to make this a pretty long video. Like, comment, subscribe. I've been kind of amazed at the views that my videos have been getting, even though they're not like crazy numbers. Like, 1,000 views is like a lot, but it's not like a lot. You know what I mean? I'm certainly not quitting my day job. I'm here doing this for fun. I enjoy talking about the tier and helping people learn. So, but yeah, if you enjoy, like, comment, subscribe. That's still welcome, but I'm mostly here for just you to enjoy whatever the heck I'm talking about and to learn something. Adios.